Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Tribeca Film Festival co-founders Jane Rosenthal and Robert De Niro.
– 40 years, every day, for 40 fucking years. At least one of you has come up and said, what do you think? Are you talking to me? How many of you have already said it today? Let's get it out of our system right now, okay? All right, 1, 2, 3, everybody. Okay. There, and try not to laugh when you hear it in the movie now.
For 40 years. And Taxi Driver is still vibrant, dangerous, and perfect as ever. So are you, Bob. Marty Scorsese and Taxi Driver was my personal reason for wanting to go into film. And here we are at the Tribeca Film Festival in this beautiful theater, seeing this classic, quintessential New York film. Marty Scorsese, Paul Schrader, Jodie Foster, Harvey Keitel, Sybil Shepherd, and thanks to Sony for this meticulous restoration and to Infor for sponsoring tonight. Please stay after the movie for a discussion with Marty, Bob, Paul, Jodie, Harvey, Sybil, and moderated by Ken Jones. And now, Taxi Driver.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for coming out tonight. My name's Mara. I'm the Panels and Programs producer here at the festival, and it's my pleasure to introduce an incredible group tonight. Firstly, our moderator, Kent Jones. Director Martin Scorsese. Robert De Niro. Jodie Foster. Sybil Shepherd. Paul Schrader. Michael Phillips. And Harvey Keitel.
Yeah, I guess we should sit, right?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Yep. All right.
Take care of this crowd, huh?
Order we were placed.
Well,
Just a chair. What's that? Yeah, we could do an audience participation evening if you want to. Yeah. The first time I ever saw this movie was on my first date with my high school girlfriend. I was 15. Anyway, the first of many times, and I have to say that it's as dangerous as it made New York look. It also made us want to come here because we thought if something that awesome and powerful can come out of this, we need to be there. And I know a lot of other people who felt the same, many people in the audience, I'm sure. I guess the best place to start is with the writer, Paul Schrader. And now, Paul, I just want to correct, there's an impression that the script is based on Arthur Bremer's diaries. Not true, right? The man who shot George Wallace.
I knew about Bremer. The diaries hadn't been published yet.
Yeah, and so, yeah. so that's done. So
and in fact, when the diaries came out, I was surprised that there were so many moments of synchronicity between his diaries and the film we had made.
Yeah, I think that you were talking about your approach to Taxi Driver, and you had quoted a line from from another film that you wrote, The Yakuza, where you said when someone goes nuts in Japan, they shut the blind and kill themselves. When someone goes nuts in America, they open the window and shoot somebody else.
Well, I mean, I think, you know, there's the time is limited, and there's a lot of people here, and I just want to say something as concisely as possible, which is this script began in the best possible way, which is it began as self-therapy. There was a person who I was afraid of, who I was afraid I was becoming, and that was this taxi driver. And I felt that if I wrote about him, I could distance him from me. And so, and it worked. And it really does show that art has therapeutic powers. But the beauty of it, as it migrated, you know, through director and cast and studio release, etc., it still retained that original purpose, that purgative power. I think still, after 40 years, is still imbues the film.
Now, what was the order in which it was read? Marty, did you read it first before Bob and Michael?
I think, Michael, you could, I remember Brian De Palma gave me the script.
Brian De Palma was living next door to me, and Paul was writing a journalistic piece on Brian, and he showed Brian the script, and Brian said it's not for me, but he thought it would be something I would like, and it was. So that was the next step. That I read it, and I thought I was looking into a naked soul. I had never seen anything like this, and but it was a long journey still. That was 1972, summer of 1972.
And Marty,
Then I was given the script by Brian, but I hadn't made Mean Streets yet, and we're in the process of beginning to make it, I think. And he introduced me to Paul, and it took until, I think, and you too, Michael and Julia, it took a while for you guys to. I kept saying I want to do this, but I had nothing that I could show you.
He didn't have, yes. But then we saw a rough cut of Mean Streets. Paul had said, you got to go see this. And it wasn't yet released. And we knew, I mean, halfway through, I knew that you were our guy and that I had never seen in Johnny Boy such an unpredictable, riveting character. And so this was our team. But they weren't yet bankable because they were sort of unknown.
And a lot of this has to do with Julia, Michael's wife, who's no longer with us, who was, you know, a real forceful person and had a contact with Beagleman at Columbia, and that's really how this thing started to come together.
Well, it really came together because the talent stuck with the package until it became a bargain. And at one point, and after Bobby had won his Oscar for Godfather 2, and Marty was already recognized as a star director, they hung in there at bargain basement prices, and we did this film very cheaply, and David Beagleman saw a bargain when he knew it.
Yeah. And Marty, what was it that you saw in the script? What was it that drew you to it?
Well, how should I put this? What I saw, I can't articulate. It just had to be done. And that's all. So, and I think Bob and I, we never really spoke about meaning or theory of any kind.
Never had long
Yeah.
existential discussions
Exactly.
about
Paul with himself, I think, no, Paul's really the one who expresses it, I think. I just had a kind of determination to make it, and as I said earlier, it was a film that I didn't think anybody would really see. It was a film that was just made out of the passion of the situation, who we were, really, at the time.
And what the city was at the time, huh?
Yeah, well, the city, yeah.
I mean, the movies are full of serendipity. Bob and Marty and I never really talked much about the script because we knew this guy. We all knew this guy. And, you know, and that's where the serendipity comes in, where three young men at a certain moment in their lives sort of sync up and share a common sort of pathology, and see it, and so you know sometimes you get lucky.
Mm-hmm. Bob, wasn't it you had an idea for a movie that was similar in nature? No, at the time.
Well, when I was younger, I had something in mind that was similar. Yeah, in some ways, basically a guy who was isolated, alone, kind of like the Travis character, which I never really fully realized, but. When I read it, I identified with it, as I think we all did, even though Marty's from right in the heart of New York. I'm from the heart of New York, not far from each other in Manhattan. We just identify with the character. And we all, Paul conceived it, everybody. We all felt very, very good about the whole project, and so that was it.
Yeah. And there's some of Paul in the way that you played the character, no?
Yeah, I mean, there were things that, even literal stuff, kind of like, I think the shoes that you had, the boots I took, your jacket, stuff like that. And by the way, where is that jacket? Because I want to get that.
The jacket is at the Harry Ransom Center because you suggested I give it there with all your stuff. And the boots are there too, so that in fact they're for public. You know, they haven't been sold or anything. So Bob gave all his stuff to University of Texas in Austin and suggested I do the same. But Marty's not going to do that because he and Spielberg are going to take over and build a whole building.
And Bob, in preparation for the role, you drove a hack for a little bit, right?
I did. I mean, I had maybe I was doing 1900 in Italy, and Marty and I met in Cannes while he was there. We just met up there and worked on the script, and I had been working on it over there before, because when I got to New York, I had like 2 weeks, I think, to be ready to shoot. And as soon as I got back, I started driving a cab. I thought I drove for at least like 10 days or something, or maybe the whole, but I drove as much as I could in that period. We had to start at a certain point. Yeah. And yeah.
And is it true that somebody got into your cab and said, aren't you the guy that won the Oscar?
Marty said, I don't know, I don't remember. Okay.
Yeah, you told me that it was a guy got in the car and he noticed that it was your name on the driver's license, and you said, my God, you just won an Oscar. Is it that hard to get a job as an actor?
Yeah. I said, yeah. I'm still on the unemployment line.
Jody, you were really surprised to get the script offered to you, right?
Yeah, I'd just done Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore with Marty, so we knew each other. I'd seen Mean Street 1,000 times, and was a big fan of the cinema of the day, really, the 70s movies. And my mom took me to the movie theaters and took me to see European films. And I think she wanted for me in some ways to have a meaningful career and to have a part like this. And I just sort of showed up,
Yeah, but you were afraid that your friends were going to make fun of you. Is that true?
Just the hot pants. That was
right.
That wasn't good. The hot pants and the dumb hat and the sunglasses. And the first day that I believe it was Ruth Morley, yeah, the costume designer. The first day I cried. And then I was just mortified the first day of shooting.
And you had to do a 4-hour interview with a psychiatrist, or?
Well, the Board of Education didn't want to give me a work permit. Every time a young actor has to do a movie, they have to get a work permit, and then they said no, I couldn't have one, and we hired a lawyer, and they decided to determine whether I was psychologically sane enough to play the part, and I guess I passed.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Sybil, I had read something very interesting that you had said about, yeah, I mean, you were in, 3 amazing movies, kind of almost back-to-back, Last Picture Show, Heartbreak Kid, and Taxi Driver, and with Heartbreak Kid, you had said you had learned working with Elaine May, you had learned about improvisation?
Yeah, I didn't know what improvisation was. She said, okay, let's improvise. I went, what's that? But I did learn. I wanted to mention David Beagleman, who did me a great favor, who said, you can't do Taxi Driver and this other film. And I said, no problem, Taxi Driver.
Good decision. Did the improv come in handy when you were working on this?
Well, yes, absolutely. That's how we found the lines. It was Mr. De Niro and I. We improvised, and I think, Marty, you had a 16mm black and white camera?
Video.
Yeah, video.
Video.
And then you wrote the lines based on our improvisation?
Yeah, and then we based some of the scenes. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It was at the St. Regis.
Yeah, nice hotel.
Yeah. Dali was still living there.
No.
Salvador Dali. Yes, he would sit in the lobby. His mustache. Whoa, watch out. It's amazing.
You didn't want to give him a bit part in the movie?
No, it was kind of...
different kind of New York, yeah.
And also with Sybil, Marty and I had been talking about who this character is, and I said, well, she's like Sybil Shepherd, and he said, yeah, but there's no way, she would do this. And then I heard from Sue Mingers.
Yeah, Sue.
And she said, I hear you're looking for a Sybil-like actress. I said, yeah, we are. And she said, well, what about Sybil? I said, well, I said, she would never do this. And Sue says, well, ask her. So I relayed that to Marty.
Well, this was definitely a very important film for me, and I would have given my right arm to do it. And I'm so honored to be here tonight with so much talent on stage and have this great opportunity for this great film to be honored. And I just want to thank you. Thank you. I love you too.
Now, there is a fair amount of improv in the movie, correct?
Oh, no, I mean, the script was very structured and rigorous.
Yeah, it was primarily with Albert. Albert brought,
yes.
And that was something Scorsese does that's very smart when you have an uninteresting role, cast a comic. And this really was a boring role that I had written. So Marty puts Albert in there and it becomes
so I offered it to Harvey. He told me just earlier, I forgot, I offered you that part. And you said you want to do the pimp.
The pimp, yeah.
We had the boring part.
Thank you, Paul.
Harvey, you went and worked with a real pimp, correct? Yeah. Sorry. I didn't.
Has the statute of limitations apply here?
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, I'd just like to say how I met Marty, and then I'm going to pass the mic. Marty was casting a student film at NYU. Perhaps it was the first 35mm film ever made in the country. And after a number of auditions, there must have been 100 actors that showed up at first, and it came down to 3 of us, all out-of-work actors, auditioning for a movie that didn't pay any money, that was going to shoot on weekends. So I show up at NYU. At nighttime, it's dark in there. I walk in, and some fella says to me, okay, walk down the hall. You see where that light's coming from the room? I said, yeah. He said, just walk in there and wait. So I figure I'm waiting my turn to audition, the last audition for the part. There have been 3 auditions. So I walk into the room, lights on, and the whole school was dark. Just I walk in the room, there's a lamp, like in a police station, shining. I walk in, and there's a guy sitting behind the desk, and he goes, "Sit the fuck down." I said, "What?" He said, "Sit the fuck down." I said, "Excuse me, but who are you?" He said, "Just sit the fuck down." I said, "Go fuck yourself." He stands up. I stand up, and all of a sudden I hear a voice shouting from the back of this dark room, "Harvey, no, stop, stop, wait, wait. It's an improvisation." I said, "Marty, you know, excuse me, but it'd be a good idea when you're doing an improvisation to let your actors know." So, you're a genius.
Oh, I didn't know. I just figured, what the hell?
The
Tell
pimp?
the pimp story.
You don't want to tell the pimp story?
Come on. Actor Studio.
Bill Mencken was the guy behind it.
No, Bill Mencken was the guy in the room, yeah.
Yes, who at one of Marty's birthday parties, celebrating Marty's birthday, shoved his face into the cake.
Yes.
Remember that?
Yes. Yes. Well,
Another
tell about the
improv.
pimp. He's avoiding this. Read Caesar's will.
Oh, ye gods! There's nothing to say much about. There's a lot to say, but well, I'll tell you. Just one funny thing about it is that I was looking to meet a pimp because I didn't know what to do about being a pimp. You know, not that I wasn't a lowlife myself, but so I was doing a Broadway show at the time, and a lot of the girls would hang out near 10th Avenue, 9th Avenue, and I went over to one of the girls one night, and my name was on the marquee and all that, so I went up to her, and I said, "Excuse me, but I'm Harvey Keitel, and there's my name on the poster there, and I'm doing a movie," and I began to explain to her about playing the pimp in Taxi Driver, and I said, "I'm looking for someone to help me to understand what it's like to be a pimp," and I'm talking, and I'm talking, and I'm talking, and she doesn't say a word. I said, "Could you help me out?" She looks at me and goes, "No one's going to talk to you." So I sulked away like this, you know, and then I met a pimp. I mean, someone who said he was a former pimp. I don't know what that means, but and we improvised for a couple of weeks together, me and this fellow, and he taught me what it was like to play the role of a pimp, and I'd play the girl, and he taught me what the pimp would do, and then I'd play the pimp, and he'd be the guy, and we had a good business together. It went something like that. And then Marty wanted those scenes to be in the movie, so he put them in the movie. They weren't in the movie to begin with, the dance with Jody and all that. So, okay, I've talked enough.
I think in terms of improv, though, basically the key one was Bob and the Mirror, where I remember he called you, Paul. I asked him to say something in the Mirror, and so he called you. And
yeah, I mean, it was not scripted because the script just said Travis looks in the mirror, plays like a cowboy, takes out the gun, talks to himself. And so Bob said, what does he say? I said, well, it's just like when you're a kid and you got that little holster to the cap gun and you're standing there and you're going, oh, and it's just like that. And so, he took it from there.
But where did you find the Taxi Driver, Gene Palma, the drummer?
Gene Palmer, the Chick Webb and all that. That was just a guy on Columbus Circle. Yeah. That's all. I mean, those are things that we sort of put into the picture. Yeah. Michael and I were running around. So look at this guy, and there was another fellow. And I had to find a place in the editing form, Yeah.
Yeah, who for years was a fixture in New York. He turned up in different places. The Taxi Driver drummer, Oh yeah. And then Stephen Prince as the gun dealer is, Yeah, a friend of yours. So it was a hot summer, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The weather was, I mean, we were, at that time, I think the only person in the trailer was you, I think. Also for the makeup and also later for the Mohawk thing. So we were just hanging out in the streets, and it was Michael and I, and the problem was, of course, the heat in the city at the time, and enormous amounts of rainstorms, thunderstorms that kept pushing us back in scheduling and that sort of thing, and there were lots of problems with the studio on that. But the city was wonderful at the time, I thought. Everybody told me it was dying and it was a terrible city, and that's what I grew up in. I grew up downtown on Elizabeth Street. I didn't see much of a difference, you know? I mean, yeah, 8th Avenue and 52nd and 42nd Street we didn't want to hang around there too long that night when we were doing that scene, I could tell you, you know.
You forgot that these were all condemned buildings and there were gangs we were assiduously avoiding.
Oh, that's right, yes, yeah. No, but seriously, it's part of being in the city at night in the summer where you could feel it in the film, Michael Chapman's photography. You can get a sense of, you could taste the humidity, and you could taste a sense of sometimes kind of anger and violence that was emanating from the streets themselves. It was crazy. The rainstorms were really bad, though. That was finally we just started shooting in them because it couldn't match anything. Remember in the scene with the apple pie and the luncheonette, and I didn't want to shoot against the wall. I wanted to shoot out the window with Bob and Sybil because you had all of Columbus Circle out there, and you had all this going on, but nothing matched when it stopped raining and rained. And so we had a big confrontation about that with the studio, but we finally pulled through on that because I felt that the city was so much of a character, and we sort of had to really fight our tooth and nail to get that, I remember.
Yeah, don't really believe him. Scorsese has never cared about whether the thing's matched.
That's true. That's true.
Marty, technically, can you just talk about how you got the overhead shot at the end? You put a hole in the ceiling, right?
Well, we were in this condemned building, right? On 88th and Columbus.
But that was down on 13th, right?
Well, the exterior was down on 13th, and the hallway was in the 89th Street, Columbus. And Jody's room was on Columbus Avenue, on 88th Street, I believe, right? 89th. And the building was somehow, if it was condemned, we're still in it. We were shooting a movie in there. I don't know what happened, but the next thing we started, I remember, Michael, because it was in the script that it was an overhead tracking. And I said, well, they said, how do you want to get it? I said, well, I guess we have to cut through the ceiling, which is what they did. And it took about 3 months, remember? And then when it came time to shoot it, the teacher, or what is it, like the child labor law person?
Oh, did they cause you trouble?
Well, they said you only have 20 minutes.
Right.
So sorry.
And so we were talking to your mother. We were trying everything. No, please, no, please. I mean, 20 minutes we did. It's been like a year building up to it. But they said, no. I said, please. She went, just an extra shot, you know. But we got it, I think, in 2 takes. Yeah.
Sometimes that's all it takes.
That's all it takes, yeah. It was so funny.
And you were kind of freaked out about the blood?
Freaked out?
Fake
Oh,
blood?
no. It was fantastic.
You loved it?
I mean, I remember Dick Smith there with all those big, wonderful gallons of Caro syrup, you know, with things floating around in them. And all the guys would teach me what they were doing. And watching Bobby put on his headpiece, you know, the prosthetic mohawk. It was fascinating. And you know, people have always asked, and I'm sure has asked all of us, how frightening that scene was and how frightening it was to shoot. But honestly, it was kind of fun. I don't know.
A lark. Bob, the Mohawk was it's a special forces thing, right? You got.
That was a thing that Marty. Speaking about that whole shootout at the end, it's funny when you do those kind of terrible, gruesome scenes. Everybody kind of jokes, and I guess it made me think of people who are in those type of situations for real. Probably have no choice but to joke about it, and that's kind of what we were doing, as I remember, in that, you know, in that setting. Because it's just so gruesome that you make jokes about it, even though it wasn't real. It was real enough for us, and in any case. But the Mohawk was something that Marty and we were with a friend of his who was in special forces at that time, who would do halo, I guess, diving, into Cambodia or Laos or wherever. And he showed us a picture of he and his outfit, and they had, a couple of guys had Mohawks, or at least one or two of them did, as I remember.
Yes.
And we said, that's great, let's use that, let's try and do it. So then it was just how we could do it, because I was about to do The Last Tycoon after that, and my hair was all bushy and everything. So I remember Marty and I had to kind of resolve it, and we met at Gallagher's Steakhouse. I don't know if you remember that, Marty, on 52nd Street. We had a talk about how we're going to do this, and we decided to get Dick Smith to do a test, and Dick did a test, and it worked.
Yeah, yeah.
We were very concerned about.
I remember I was in the other room, and I had fallen asleep while he was working on your the headpiece, whatever it is, with the Mohawk, and I had just dozed off for a moment, and then I felt a tap on my shoulder, and I opened my eyes, and you were there with this thing, and it was terrifying. It was like, whoa, does it work? I said, really scary, yeah.
I want to just talk a little bit about Bernard Herrmann and his incredible score. You had said that when you had approached him for the first time, he said, I hear brass, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I met him through Brian De Palma again, who was he was doing his score for the film Obsession.
Which Paul also wrote.
Yeah, yeah. And so I got his phone number. I was in Amsterdam. I remember giving him a call in London, and I said, I'd like you to take a look at this script. It's a film called Taxi Driver. And he said, I don't do films about cabbies. So no. I just, okay, meet me in London. So we met, and he read the script, and he liked the fact that the character used peach brandy on the cereal. So that's interesting. It's interesting. So Michael, you made a deal, right?
He was impossible to wrangle. He kept quitting the film.
Yeah.
He arrived at the airport. He had been in self-exile in England for a decade, came back and went straight to the return counter to buy a ticket and had brought back. And then on the recording stage, there was a gooseneck lamp that he kept hitting with his baton, but he blamed the lamp and he quit, and he threw his baton into the orchestra. But Bernie died. We recorded for 2 days, and he died at the end of the second day that evening.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time you had to change one of his cues on the dubbing stage. You were a little scared.
Yeah, yeah.
We were all scared of Bernie. That's the truth.
Yeah, but I spent some time with him in London. We talk about the scores he did for Wells and Hitchcock, and even the Sinbad films. I mean, and so we became friendly with him. But he did tell me that he saw it all, he heard it all in brass, very strong. And the way I envisioned the film, and I had drawn all the pictures, as you remember, because we were under so much pressure, I had to draw everything, was I imagined it to Van Morrison T.B. Sheets, a kind of bluesy, creeping through the streets at night kind of thing.
Yeah, I was very surprised when I first heard this thing about Bernie Herrmann, because Marty was a needle drop addict. And all of Main Streets had all been needle drops. And I figured, well, that's what we'll do on Taxi Driver, we'll do all these needle drops. And then one day he says, what do you think of Bernard Herrmann? And I was sort of flabbergasted. It was an inspiration.
Well, the thing about it, Paul, was that this term needle drops, I guess, is something about a music being heard, because that's how I grew up, with all the music around me from different places, different windows, and whether it was opera or jazz or swing or rock and roll. And so that's the way I saw everything, and in Mean Streets, and even in Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. But when Travis doesn't listen to anything, he doesn't listen to any music. And I said, well, then the only person who could do something that could express what he's suffering is Bernard Herrmann.
And you told me a story that you wanted the Jackson Browne in there. There were two cues we were talking about. One was Jackson Browne, and the other was Barry White. And Bernard Herrmann says, the only person who does music in a Bernard Herrmann film is Bernard Herrmann. And you won the battle over Jackson Browne, but the Barry White, we ended up Harvey doing Bernard Herrmann's Barry White.
Oh, that's right. Bernard Herrmann did that music. And you wrote the lyrics, is it?
Keith, yeah.
Wow. Oh, Keith Addis, too. Yeah. Wow. I didn't remember, yes. No, the Jackson Browne, yeah, the Late for the Sky, yeah.
And that's an interesting story about the last moment at the end of the movie with the sting.
Yeah, when Travis looks in the mirror in the cab and he looks back, he thinks he sees something. I said, I was there with Bernard Herrmann and the orchestra, and I said, I just need some kind of a sound there. And he said, you mean a sting? A sting? And I said, yeah, I guess that's what I mean. And so he said, okay. And he got the xylophone player, and they hit the xylophone a number of times. And he played it back. And I said, it's still, I mean, that's right. I said, but it needs something special. He said, play it backwards. And walked out. And that's the last time it was the last time I saw him. Yeah.
So you guys had serious doubts about whether people were going to want to go see this movie, right? I mean, you knew that you wanted to make the movie, but...
Well, as I said, for me, I was almost like, and for Bob, too, he's working with Kazan, he's working with Bertolucci, he's working, Francis Coppola. So, like, this was just something we had to do, and then we move on with our lives. And, you know, that was the idea. And Paul was starting to direct soon. You were doing Blue Collar, Will Harvey. You were about to do that, you know. And Richard Pryor, Hardcore, all these pictures. So everybody said, yeah, okay, let's get this done, for God's sakes. Come on, we got to do it. And I couldn't believe it. I was saying earlier that you called me the day it opened. You said, take a look at the line around the corner on Cinema One, or I made the Coronet Theater. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
it was one of those things. I had been up late the night before. It was those times, and I had overslept, and I was at the Sherry, and so I couldn't get a cab. I ran all the way across town to the Baronet, and I got there, and there was a huge line outside of the theaters, the one theater, first show, and I thought, oh my God, there's been something's gone wrong, and they've closed the theater. And I went up to the woman. I said, what happened? What happened? And she said, well, they're about ready to start the movie. I said, well, why are all these people out here? She said, they're for the next show. And I walked up into the theater. That was the very first screening in New York. And the cab pulls out of the steam, and it says taxi driver, and the audience applaud. The film had never been projected before. It was some kind of New York kind of groundswell that just, you know, was there.
Incredible. I had no idea. It was amazing.
Yeah.
No, none.
And you had an interesting experience in Cannes with the film, right?
At Cannes, Jody was there, Paul, Michael, Julia, I think. Was she? No, she wasn't there. Bob and me, and I don't know, Harv, you weren't there, were you?
Yeah, he was.
At Cannes for this? You were there? Yeah. Well, do you remember?
The only guy in a brown suit.
Oh, okay. That's all right. It's coming back.
I didn't have a tuxedo.
Oh, that's right. But the jury was Costa Gavras and Sergio Leone
and Tennessee Williams was the president.
Well, Tennessee Williams was the president of the jury. And we did our work for 2 or 3 days. We did interviews, we did press conferences. And then an article came out. They had a thing there, I don't know if they still do, but probably on the internet now. But there's kind of a little booklet or a kind of a flyer that goes out each day about the latest gossip and stuff about the festival. And the headline was, Tennessee Williams does not like, hates Taxi Driver. He said it's far too violent. And so we just did our work, and we went home. However, before we did, Leone and Costa Gavras gave us a dinner at a restaurant called L'Oasis, or the Oasis.
I think Harry Ufflin gave you
Harry
that
Ufflin?
dinner.
Yeah.
He gave you that dinner because ICM paid for it.
Yes,
and
that's
that was
right.
the end of Harry Ufflin at ICM.
Really? That was the last time you saw Harry?
Yeah, he charged it to the company, and
That's right.
the next day they
Oh,
fired
that's
him.
right. You were with Harry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all
Yeah,
with
well,
Harry. All
Harry
of us
was
were.
my first agent, basically, for about 20 years, you know. And Marion Billings, you know, she was there. She said, I think they liked the film, et cetera. And
Pauline Kael, I think maybe too.
I think she was there, was she?
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the film had already come out in the U.S., so it had been reviewed.
Oh, I see.
In February, and Cannes is May. So it was already a success. In fact, it was unlikely that it would be shown at Cannes. Today, they probably wouldn't even bother showing an American film that had opened in February and May.
But at the dinner, nobody talked about, I don't recall them, Costa and Sergio talking about, oh, you know, we're going to make sure this film wins something or whatever. And we were just talking about cinema. We were talking about their films and about Once Upon a Time in the West and that sort of thing. And that was it. We went home. And I think, Michael, you stayed?
Yeah, you went home, and then we, to our surprise, found out we won. And so I went to accept the award, and to my shock, when they announced that Taxi Driver won, half the audience cheered, half the audience booed.
Got it.
Well, okay, but the movie gets the last laugh because you know, that's why we're all here tonight, and I want to thank you all for coming. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.